When I saw the movie months later, the first cut of the movie, I'm the only person in the world to have giggled their way through the first cut of Platoon, not because it wasn't good, but because it was so good. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm not getting fired. And in fact, it was so good, it won Best Picture that year at the Academy Awards. The current of the river of life always tries to pull you towards the middle. Morning, noon, and night, imperceptibly, it's trying to pull us all towards the middle. And that's okay if you want to live a life in the middle, but you'll never be great that way, and your company will never be great that way. And the way to fight against that current is being a little crazy or with a touch of the madness. And I decided then and there that it would be my touchstone. That's what I would do. And it has been to this day. And it's how I cast. It's how I buy art. It's how I buy scripts. It's how I do everything. Does it have a touch of the madness? I look for a touch of the madness. You can't blueprint success. You can't say, well, Platoon works, so the next movie called The Infantry will work. It doesn't work that way. But the audience who we have to listen to, we all work for the audience, whether you make shoes or movies or handbags, and they want the new and the different. And to really get something, you have to take a shot and you have to embrace your crazy side. You have to be a little bit crazy to come up with a great idea. Nothing great happens without taking a chance. Talent is half the battle in anything. And if you don't also have the zeal and the perseverance and the fortitude to go after it and never give up no matter what, which I also call part of a touch of the madness, it doesn't matter. In a state of play, you're going to do things you won't do not in a state of play. The world underestimates fun, especially now. One of my missions in life is to bring back fun. I'm at the point in my career where if I tell someone an idea for a movie and they go, oh my God, that's great, that's fantastic, that sounds like a slam dunk, I get a little nervous. But if they say, you're crazy, what are you doing? Here you go again. I feel this kind of warm embrace of a touch of the madness. Yeah, like a mist in the morning walk on the beach in the summer. And I go, okay, I'm on the right track and let's go do it. I don't mind if people call me crazy. So what? It's a compliment. But what if someone doesn't like your idea? What if someone hangs up? What if someone calls you crazy? So what? We're somehow taught that that's not a good thing. I think it's a great thing. So I think people just have to believe you can do it. There's another old saying that people will do more to avoid what they fear than to seek what they desire.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavash Naik. A hypothesis we often visit on this podcast is when the humanness of our people is the foundation of our business, we create high-performing organizations that stand the test of time. An important aspect of being human is being able to express our inherent creativity and bring innovations to our businesses and organizations. One way to build a self-sustaining, thriving organization is by infusing the creativity and innovation deep in its organizational culture while keeping in mind that business building itself is a creative endeavor. To shed some light on the process of tapping into our creativity and making it an essential part of our business culture, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Larry Kasanoff is the chairman and CEO of Threshold Entertainment and a film producer behind some of the most iconic movies of our times, including Dirty Dancing, Platoon, Terminator 2, True Lies, Mortal Kombat, and Lego Star Wars. As a producer or studio head, Larry has made over 200 feature films and has raised over $1 billion, that's billion with a B, in the film business. In his new book, A Touch of the Madness, he challenges us to embrace our crazy side, the most unique, boldest, and bravest part of us, and our greatest asset when it comes to creating something truly original. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Larry.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So that list of movies, you are a legend, Larry. So that list,
at least I keep telling everyone I am.
I believe it. So of those 7 movies, I watched 5 myself. Me and my family,
5.
all of them.
5? Sure. What, not the other 2? Easy.
That's on the list, right? My kids have probably watched
something to look forward to. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And I'm sure I've watched like Dirty Dancing, Platoon, Terminator 2. I watched those multiple times. So I'm so happy to have you here. And I really thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure.
So coming to your book, A Touch of the Madness, and you call it The Madness. Mm-hmm. So what is this madness that you're talking about? And why did you write this book with this topic?
Well, let me explain the history and why I ran it. So I wanted to be a movie producer since I was a little kid. And I got very, very lucky and out of school got a great job where I became head of production for an independent studio called Vestron in the 80s. And Vestron was riding the wave of home video, whereas today is the wave in streaming, then there was wave in home video. Whenever there's one of these waves, you need a lot of content. So my job as head of production and acquisitions out of school was to make 80 movies a year, 80. And now the average studio today makes 12. And I also had no idea what I was doing. So my instructions were buy them, make them, co-produce them, acquire them, don't lose money. That was it. And so we made, very fun movies, low budget horror movies, action movies, rom-coms and things like that. And then one day I got a script for the movie Platoon. And if your listeners don't know, Platoon is a very serious movie about the Vietnam War and the effects it had on the kids who went. And it was very interesting because it was more the psychological effects than the physical effects. And I went to my boss, who was a great disruptive entrepreneur, and I said, I want to make this movie. And he said, you're crazy. That's not what we do. We do these fun, high concept things. No one in the movie was a star. They all became stars. They weren't stars yet. It wasn't a fun concept. And the director, Oliver Stone, we had co-financed his prior movie called Salvador, which I thought was great, but didn't make a lot of money. But I fought for it. And my boss said, look, you're the head of production. It's your decision now. But here's one thing. There's always a but. And I said, what? And he said, well, if you screw up and if the movie fails, you're fired. What do you want to do? And he fired people all the time. He wasn't threatening. He wasn't an idle
pressure,
threat.
right?
Yeah. No, right. And I thought about it. It's a great job. And I thought, well, I didn't get into the movie business to play it safe. So I greenlit Platoon. When I saw the movie months later, the first cut of the movie, I'm the only person in the world to have giggled their way through the first cut of Platoon, not because it wasn't good, but because it was so good. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm not getting fired. And in fact, it was so good, it won Best Picture that year at the Academy Awards. A few months later, I ran into the director, Oliver, at a bar in New York, and he bought me a drink and he said, kid, I always liked you. You have a touch of the madness. And I thought, a touch of the madness? The madness? Like crazy? Like a little bit of crazy? Is he calling me crazy? Am I crazy? And then I thought about it and I thought, well, my boss had a touch of the madness by letting a 25-year-old kid with no experience run an 80-picture film slate. Oliver had a touch of the madness by insisting that he make a Vietnam movie the way no one else ever had, with all newcomers in it. And I had a touch of the madness by betting the best job in the world on it. And then it hit me. It hit me that to stay innovative, you need to embrace your crazy side. You need to have a touch of the madness. And why is that important? Because as a person, as an entrepreneur, or as a company, if you the current of the river of life always tries to pull you towards the middle. Morning, noon, and night, imperceptibly, it's trying to pull us all towards the middle. And that's okay if you want to live a life in the middle, but you'll never be great that way, and your company will never be great that way. Sure. And the way to fight against that current is to be a little crazy or with a touch of the madness. And I decided then and there that it would be my touchstone. That's what I would do. And it has been to this day. And it's how I cast. It's how I buy art. It's how I buy scripts. It's how I do everything. Does it have a touch of the madness? I look for a touch of the madness because the audience wants the new and the different, not the tried and the true. And the reason I wrote the book is because I started noticing for the first time in my life that people were so scared to truly express their creative selves in the last couple of years. For whatever reasons, political correctness, it doesn't matter. They were. Yeah. And I was whining to my brother about it. My brother's a kind of a thought leader and a coach, a professional business coach. And he said, stop whining about it and write a book. So I did. And the point of the book is to try and inspire people to embrace their inner madness, to be their most creative, unfettered, true, innovative selves.
And the touch of this madness that you talk about, did you figure out what he was talking about, your boss, when he said that you have a touch of the madness? Were you able to... It
wasn't my boss, it was the director.
Your director.
The director, yeah.
Right. He said, kid, you have a touch of madness in you. Did you ever kind of grasp it? Did you ever get into some kind of a reflective mode and say, what is it? Or do you just execute from that, or you actually have somehow framed it in some way?
I did right after that, because I thought, is he calling me crazy? But then I thought, well, and now I like it when people call me crazy. But
right.
My whole life, people have been calling me crazy since I was a little kid running around, Boston, Massachusetts, in our little house, saying, I'm going to go to Hollywood and be a movie producer. Everyone says that. So I realized it was very natural to me. But I did think about it. And I thought, the movie business, especially, you can't blueprint success. You can't say, well, Platoon works, so the next movie called The Infantry will work. It doesn't work that way. But the audience who we have to listen to, we all work for the audience, whether you make shoes or movies or handbags. And
Right.
they want the new and the different. And to really get something, you have to take a shot, and you have to embrace your crazy side. You have to be a little bit crazy to come up with a great idea. Nothing great happens without taking a chance.
So when do you know? I was watching the group called ABBA. I'm sure you've heard of it, right? This
I love
ABBA
ABBA,
music
yeah.
group, right?
Yeah.
And they were doing something similar. They said, well, people used to say, well, what do you have a formula for making this music that is like, you have album after album and song after song, they're all hits. And they were saying, no, we just get together and we jam and we just kind of feel it, right? And the stuff comes out and we have to feel good about it, right? So I think you're kind of talking about something like that, right? So for example, let's say you went from Platoon, and what was the next movie? The big one, was it Dirty Dancing or Dirty Dancing? So how did you find that touch of madness in Dirty Dancing, for example? Now, because they're two entirely different movies.
So that's a really good question. So the part of it is instinct, but I do in my mind and in the book have a little bit of a formula for it. So I think there's three things you have to do. It's easy to say, hey, have a touch of the madness and be great.
Right.
I call it create, ask, play, like CAP. So the first thing you have to do is create your idea, and you can't just create it. And there's some steps to it, not PowerPoint kind of steps, but just some easy steps to do. And one of them is with an idea. Is you have to know the essence of your idea. What is the essence of your brand? In other words, when I first made Mortal Kombat, which is a movie based on a video game, every movie based on video games had failed, and people said you're betting your career. Once again, just like Platoon, you're going to bet your career, you're going to go crazy, and it's not going to work. But I never thought I was making a movie out of a video game. I thought the essence of why Mortal Kombat worked, in my mind, the essence was empowerment. Martial arts makes you believe that, if you study and do the right thing, you can beat a bigger opponent. And so if you look at an intellectual property pyramid or an idea pyramid, you tend to think, well, in Mortal Kombat's case, the top would be the video game. No, it's one rung down. The top is the essence of that idea. And then and one rung down is a video game, and then on another rung is a movie. And so you have to really understand your essence, and you have to keep it with an incredible zeal. The Touch of the Madness is not just about the idea. So in Dirty Dancing's point of view, here's a good example of that. Dirty Dancing was a movie in a bit of trouble. It was a big chance. And we managed to lure a legendary music producer named Jimmy Einer to come and oversee the movie. And Jimmy brought in another legendary music producer named Michael Lloyd. And once they were on it, we knew that the movie would go okay. But the first thing they did was the song Time of My Life, which was the biggest song from the movie.
I'm getting goosebumps. I love that song. Yeah.
Time of My Life had already been recorded, but not the song you hear. It's a high falsetto disco song. And Jimmy and Michael wanted to change it. So they re-recorded it. No one wanted to. I mean, remember, this movie was not anything. It was hard to get someone to do it. They got Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers to do it as a favor. And they recorded in a much lower, slower song. And then they sent it to everybody. The talent managers, the director, the record companies. No one liked it. Everyone said, this is not right. We got to fix it. Would you make these notes? Would you do this? And Jimmy and Michael were very gracious and said to everybody, no problem. Give us 3 weeks. We'll do all your notes. 3 weeks later, they sent out version 2 with a note saying, we sent this to some radio stations, and the radio stations like it. In those days, radio stations really helped you promote albums. And now everyone said, oh my God, it's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for making the changes. You were so accommodating. Great. So the question is, what genius Touch of the Madness changes did Jimmy make between version 1 and version 2? And here's what he changed. Nothing. He didn't change a thing. He changed the label. He just wrote version 2. And he showed it to radio stations, and if they didn't like it, it would have been out. He bet that entire movie, essentially the entire song, because he knew, and Michael, who worked with him, knew what they had. And they bet on it. That's a Touch of the Madness. That song won the Grammy and the Academy Award that year for Best Song, because their Touch of the Madness applied to when you get something and you believe in it, hold on with a crazy madness as well. Don't let it go. Because again, that river will try and pull you towards the middle. So that's a good example of how so first thing you do is create. And then the second thing I believe you have to do is ask. What does ask mean? Ask anybody, anywhere, for anything you need in advance of your goal, in advance of your creative essence. Anything. And just ask and ask and ask again. So an example, during the pandemic, we make animated movies and live action movies. We made an animated movie and we called bobbleheads, big characters with big bobbly heads.
Yeah.
And we wanted Cher to be in it, to play bobblehead Cher, to actually play herself, her own likeness. And everyone said, she'll never do it. You're crazy. Well, we called and asked, and she did it. And she was great, of course. After the movie came out, People magazine interviewed Cher and said, why did you do this? You've never done an animated movie before. Why did you pick this one? And she said, I've never done an animated movie before because no one ever asked me before. So can you imagine if Cher, one of the most famous, talented, iconic women on earth, is sitting there and no one ever called and asked her to make an animated movie? We did. So in your life, who's ever listening, you're maybe not calling someone because, they're too busy. Everyone asks them. Call. Yeah. What do you get to lose? Yeah. You can start big with whatever your biggest goal is, or call Uncle Phil and ask him why he never comes to Thanksgiving. But ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
So create, ask, and then play. And then the third thing is try and do this all, if you can, in a state of play. In a state of play with some fun, you'll be more creative, you'll be more open, and you'll see things differently. Create, ask, play. So using those criteria is how I find and hold on to a touch of the madness.
So it's, to summarize, it's create, ask, and play. Make it a play, right? So creation is basically it's like an inspiration. So there has to be some talent there, right, with the creation part. So what role do you play? What do you think that talent plays in that? For example, if I want to create music, I've talked to musicians and they say, well, they just kind of, the jingles just kind of play in my head and you just come out of nowhere and I write it down or write down the notation or what have you. Is there talent that plays a role in just this creation aspect of the CAP?
Yeah, I'm sure, of course. I mean, I think there's talent in it, and whether those musicians feel that way or they're being modest or they truly feel touched by inspiration. I know some music people who believe that entirely. They believe that something higher power is speaking through them. But that's another version of talent. They've been blessed with some gift that enables them to put together a hit song that the normal person wouldn't be able to do. Yeah, but I do believe part of a touch of the madness is finding your gift. It's finding your area. In other words, hopefully I know a little something about movie producing, but if I were in the the concrete and steel business, I don't know that I'd have any good ideas. So I think you have to find what you're good at. But that also requires this belief, this touch of the madness to say, I'm going to be a screenwriter. I'm going to be a nuclear physicist. I'm going to win an Academy Award. I'm going to win a Nobel Prize. You have to believe. And that's part of that is the touch of the madness.
Right.
In other words, here's another way of looking at it. We all have these ideas. When I talk to people, when I talk about this book all the time, who come up to me and say, I always wanted to do this X, but my wife, husband, mother, father, daughter, son, boss says it's crazy, it's too much. I don't know. That's the one. The one that everyone tells you is crazy. Yeah. The one that's the one to do. And people know it, they just run away from it. The thing that separates most people from achieving their dreams is fear.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So on that note, what is one of the folks that you worked with is James Cameron, right? I believe it was True Lies. You must have worked with him.
True Lies and Terminator 2.
True Lies and Terminator 2.
And a movie called Stranger Things, which we both produced.
Yeah. I'm in awe of what that man has done. It's a combination of creativity and attention to details. It's a rare combination. I mean, here's a guy who basically builds his own sphere to go down into the bottom of the ocean, right? At its deepest point, at the depth of the Mount Everest. That requires tremendous amount of attention to detail. You miss one little thing here and you are a meat cloud, right? at that depth, right? And he's the same guy who has created all these movies where there is a spark of genius, there is creativity, there is the creative ideas. So I guess my question for you, Larry, is what role, once you have this creative idea, of course there is ask and then there is play, but what role does is there some kind of discipline? What role does in business talk, we call it execution, right? That there has to be some discipline, that there has to be some determination, or some of those aspects.
Talent is half the battle in anything.
Right.
And if you don't also have the zeal and the perseverance and the fortitude to go after it and never give up no matter what, which I also call part of a touch of the madness, it doesn't matter. I mean, you get lucky and win the lottery, but it doesn't matter. So if you look at a great filmmaker like Jim or others, or a great scientist or a great explorer, it's not just the talent. It's the notion that no matter what, I'm never giving up. I don't care what I have to do, what I have to ask for. I'm going to do it and keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's the combination of the two. And I call that a touch of the madness. The touch of the madness isn't just sitting around saying, I know popcorn that can talk. No, it's figuring out the essence of the idea, and then with a crazy like zeal, never ever giving up on it. Because remember my original premise: the current of the river will try and pull you away from the stuff, and you have to swim against it. And that's what a touch of the madness is for. Yeah. So you talent plus persistence. Without perseverance, forget it.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic, Larry, movie producing is an art in itself, and that's your thing. So what is your talent? If you can kind of frame that in some way, what is your talent that allows you to create this unbelievable, iconic movies that you created?
Well, I mean, hopefully I'm a good producer, and hopefully I have good ideas, and I am incredibly persistent. I mean, I hang on for a long, long time. I never give up. And sometimes to the extent when I should. I mean, in my book, I have a chapter, a touch of the madness versus a ton of the madness. In other words, when are you going too far? When is sometimes madness a little, time to get out, or time to, this is too much. But hopefully the combination of those two things makes me a good movie producer. And I love it. I mean, it's crazy business. It's wild. It's insane. It's up and down. It's unpredictable, but I can't fathom doing anything else. I'm still as excited about it today as I was the first day I did it.
Sure. Yeah. Excellent. The second part of CAP, C-A-P, right? So create, ask. Now, asking is the example that comes to mind for me is when I read Lee Iacocca. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Sure, of course.
The Chrysler CEO of Chrysler, who was number 2 guy of president of Ford at one point. And he was in a business where they have to design these cars, right? And the cycle at the time, it might still be true even today. The cycle at the time was that from the concept to production, it takes 5 years. So you need to be able to figure out what's going to be hit 5 years down the road when everything is changing, right? The people's tastes are changing, which are, very difficult to gauge to begin with. Even today, we can't figure out what people will like and won't like. But, you have to think about 5 years down the road. And that was his genius, if you will, that he was able to forecast what will be hit 5 years down the road. And that was his thing. So asking, I kind of get this intuitive feeling that part of asking is trying to gauge. I think you mentioned that if there is no audience, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good the movie is, but no one is coming to watch it. Then it's not good, especially in movie business or even in car business. So is that part of asking, trying to talk to people, so there is an internal compass, right? We're tuned into the inside of us, the intuitive sense. But then is asking someone a part of that. In business, they do focus groups and things like that, which I don't like, but I'm an intuitive guy, right? But a part of asking people, hey, what do you think of this idea?
Well, I think so. And I think asking is whatever you want. I'm doing a movie I can't talk too much about, but it's a very unusual movie. It's a treasure hunting movie based on a real treasure. And in researching the movie, no kidding, I think I actually found the treasure. And it's one of the biggest treasures on earth. Wow. It's a long story, which we'll tell you about soon. Yeah. But in getting the idea for it, I then thought, hey, I think the treasure's here. Why has no one looked? And I called out of the blue. I found 10 leading archaeologists, and I just called them up. Yeah. And I said to the 10 of them, listen, here's my theory. Tell me why it's a terrible idea. It doesn't have to be a great idea, because at that point I didn't know the treasure. I was going to find the treasure, but why? I mean, tell me if it's okay, because if it's terrible, we can't do it. If it's just okay, we can't. Yeah. And 9 out of the 10 said, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Yeah. And then they started helping. And then we developed a movie, which we're soon to make, and we as I said, I believe found the treasure. So sure, ask. If you want to know something you don't know and someone does know it, ask them. Yeah. Because you have to do in pursuit of your goal. And if your goal is, gee, I'm not sure if pink colored Volkswagens will be popular in 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's people who have good opinion on that. Ask them. Right. Ask anybody. Yeah. And I learned how to do this in college. I had a great professor as an undergraduate at Cornell who taught me to do this. So I've been doing this since I was a freshman in college. It's not just since I was a movie producer. I mean, when I was in grad school, I had to do a thesis on Warner Brothers. So I just called the CEO as a student. And he called me back. We talked for an hour. I got so into it. Which is really stupid. I don't recommend it. But I spent my entire student loan and I bought Warner stock that year. Thank goodness it worked. Not a smart idea. But I've been calling people. It's not just now. It's anytime. But here's the question. You see, you're a little different if I ask you because of what you do you do this. But if I ask your audience or I ask most people, if there's anyone on earth right now who you could call up and ask a question, who would you call and what would you ask them? Yeah. And most people say, gee, that's a good question. I don't know. And the reason they don't know is because they don't think it's possible. Yeah. But it is possible. Yeah. And if that guy doesn't or the girl doesn't answer you, call someone else. Yeah, they just don't think you can. But sure you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say that what I'm asking for, or what I would ask for, is something that I'm already doing right now, which is talking to Larry Kasanoff. Good answer. Asking him about the touch of madness. Right. So play. And something that you're alluding to, which I just absolutely love, is that, we talk about execution in business and things like that, right? But that's a dry term, right? Now, who wants to execute? Who wants to do the tasks and, do things that I don't want to do? Get up and drag myself out of the bed in the morning and go to work and do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But play is different, right? So could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. So I think in a state of play, you are going to be more creative and more aware and make a better product, whatever your product is. So here's an example. When I started my first job, the company had already ordered one movie that was starting, but I didn't create it. I didn't develop it. Yeah. And it was at the time what we would call like a sort of Game of Thrones type movie, but with 1/1,000,000th of the budget. It was really low budget movie to be made in Italy. Yeah. And my boss said to me and the development staff, okay, I want everything you can think of. I want violence. I want sword fights. I want dragons. I want sex. I want intrigue. And someone kind of yelled, and snakes and wizards. And everyone laughed. Yeah. He goes, yeah, and snakes and wizards. And we thought that was funny. And when we were, the producer, we were the executive producers in the studio, was already in Italy prepping the movie. And every time we finished a conference call, we would say, remember, snakes and wizards. Yeah. And when I get to Italy, I think it's going well. I'd never been on a movie set before, but it seemed like it was going well. I was learning a lot, and it was really fun. The Italians are great, and they drink wine at lunch. And so they said to me one Monday morning, we have a surprise for you this week. And I said, oh, great. And they kept very excited. And on Thursday morning, right before lunch, they assembled me outside, and they said, look, and the hills of Rome were behind us, and I couldn't see anything. And then you see a little speck. And it was getting bigger and bigger. And I realized it was a truck. And then they were all in a semicircle around me. And a band started playing. I don't know where they got a band. And then the truck comes closer. And the truck is painted with big balloons and stuff. And it backs up. And the doors open. And out pour a ton of people dressed as wizard with live snakes. I mean, like boa constrictors and Burmese pythons. And they all applaud. And they all yell, snakes and wizards. And they were so proud that they got snakes and wizards. But it was a joke. There were no snakes and wizards in the movie. And I realized, oh my goodness, we forgot to tell. I mean, it's not in the script, but we forgot to tell them. So not in a state of, I didn't know what to do. Not in a state of play. I would have gotten mad. How could you do this? It's a lot of money. We don't have enough budget. It's not in the movie. What do you think? Yeah. But then that would have demoralized the crew, and it wouldn't have done me any good because they thought they were doing a good thing. And it's also hard to say no to a 12-foot Burmese python who's staring you in the face, but they look great. And I said, you know what? Put them all in the movie. And everyone cheered, and we put them all in the movie. Yeah. And they look great. Now, honestly, the movie's terrible. I mean, it's just not a good movie, but it made a ton of money, and the Snakes and Wizards helps. So in a state of play, I turned the crew on my side. I added something to the movie. It's a great idea. We were kidding, but it worked. Yeah. Not in a state of play, I would have completely screwed it up.
Sure.
So try and live your life in a state of play and think, you know what? I'm in Rome. I'm making my first movie. I'm having a glass of wine. The crew's being great. Boy, does this Burmese python look good. Maybe I'll become friends with him, and we put him all in the movie.
Yeah.
In a state of play, you're going to do things you won't do not in a state of play. The world underestimates fun, especially now. One of my missions in life is to bring back fun.
Yeah.
You know, I just published another book called Malibu Blonde, which is a coffee table photography book. I live in Malibu, which kind of harkens back to Malibu evokes a kind of freer, sexier, playful time. Gorgeous women cavorting on the beach, puppy dogs, Beach Boys music, surfing, you know, red Mustang convertibles, and all the money from the book goes to endangered elephant charities. And it's fun. And everyone who's seeing it, and we're going to do other things with Malibu Blonde, is saying, oh, this is so fun. I yearn for a time like this. So I think we all have to bring back fun. The world would be a better place if we all had a little more fun.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes. Fun. Yeah. I was leading a class one time, and I was saying that, you know, achieving goals is fine, but it takes only about half a second to realize that you achieved the goal. You know, you track up the Mount Everest, right?
Right.
And you summit. You summit there, and you stay there for about 5 minutes.
Right.
So the achievement of the goal is like very short, but how you get there?
Right.
That's the play, right? That's the fun part. And I was saying that you got to have fun. And she goes, do you have steps for me to have fun? And I love your mission. You know, I want to bring fun. It's like, you know,
bring back fun.
You're right. Bring back fun.
Well, but you know what? I asked people like, what, we just had a party to launch Malibu Blonde, and I said to everybody, what are you doing to bring back fun? I mean, and if you think about it, people, I don't know how the world got so unfun, but it's time to change back, because fun is great and it's healthy and it will make us all more successful, personally and professionally.
I'm with you on that mission. Absolutely.
Good.
I talk to folks and we talk about creativity and things like that. And some people say, or actually a lot of people say, well, there's no creative bone in my body. I'm not creative, or I'm not a creative person. Or I'm not a risk taker, right? Because there is an element of risk here, right? I need to take risk. So what do you say to someone who considers himself or herself not to be a risk taker when it comes to creativity?
if they really believe that, and that's deep down what they believe, then don't take risks. That's okay. Then then don't be scared not to take risks. Don't be scared to say, I like what I do. It's very predictable. This is what I want. And I'm going to move to the Midwest and get a nice house, and I'm going to work 9 to 5, and I'm going to get a pension. That's okay. I mean, the whole point of this is to do what you want. And if what you want, everyone doesn't want to be a movie producer and live the kind of crazy life I do, then don't. Yeah. The point is to be yourself. And look, without getting too, spiritual about this, there's an element of mindfulness to this whole thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I produce Mortal Kombat movies, and I read a book years ago by a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh. And I loved the book, and I thought, what am I going to do with and so I said, what am I going to do with this peaceful, beautiful monk? So I called him up to see if I could come meet him to be inspiration for a character in our, action-packed video game-based movies, Mortal Kombat. But a funny thing happened. After 2 hours of being with him, I felt like I'd been on vacation for like a year. And I said, what's your secret? And he said, no secret, practice. I said, I can learn this. And long story short, I wound up making a documentary on mindfulness. I'm still friends with him. I mean, he passed away, but I'm friends with some of the other monks. And I practice mindfulness. And so that's part of it. And so you have to be true to yourself. That's what this whole thing's about. A touch of the madness is, if that's what you want, and someone's saying, no, come on, be more fun. Don't. You got to, it goes both ways. So if you want to be a structural engineer and that's it, nothing wrong with that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the touch of madness, because the world wants you to be something else. You must be creative. You must do this. You must do that. But you know what you want deep inside, and you just go ahead and do it. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So, and that
and
is
we will all be happier and better will you be better at your job if you do that? And if you're a manager and you can find people who do what they want, a lot of people come to us all the time and say they want to be in the movie business because it sounds glamorous, but a lot of them, when they get to know what it really is, they don't. Yeah. So, that's always a tough moment when you say, do you really, you think you want this, but you really want this. Yeah. And that's helping people understand that is good for them and it's good for your business.
Absolutely. Right. So one of the things that I like to talk about and get into at this point about this point in the conversation is this idea where I'm having a mindful moment right now. I'm kind of losing my chain of thought.
Deep breath.
So this idea of who, and it's okay, yeah. So you talked about the touch of the madness, right? Is there a way to make it formula? Now, and I think that the book itself probably is like a scream against making anything a formula, but I think that there are some patterns. For example, CAP is a formula, right? So let's pretend that there's an organization with, let's say, 100 people. And they are a stuffy organization, which is okay, like you said, if that's your thing. If you're an accounting firm and you need to have a certain decor and certain type of personalities working for you, and you need to be trusted, and that's your brand, that's fine. And yet within that, is there a way that a group of people can tap into their creativity and do the asking and then make it a play?
Yeah, I get asked to speak a lot now to organizations like that, and I like doing it when people haven't but want to.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes I go to these places, say like an accounting firm, where they're used to having other accountants. And look, I did go to business school. I understand the lingo, but my life is not like that. And I'm not your typical speaker because I don't have charts and graphs, and I talk about things like snakes and wizards.
Yeah.
But what I find is if you can get people to understand that your crazy ideas, your dreams have value, and you can achieve them.
Right.
Then people really get inspired and grasp onto it. And that's the flint. That's like starting a spark in the woods. Just light a fire. That's what you have to hit. And if you hit that, everyone will want to do it. Because a lot of companies, like I said, the current of the river drags you to the middle. They've gotten very, very, very complacent.
Right.
And so, yes. And what I find when I do it is people really light up. Mm-hmm. And they really get excited because now they're thinking, well, wait a minute, I didn't think we could do this idea, and we could try something different, and we can ask, and we can tell the boss we can do this. And as long as senior management is open to the idea that they're going to get some new ideas, it works great.
Right, absolutely.
Because everyone deep down I believe people want to do it.
Yeah.
People want, there's a adage in the film business that 90% of directing is casting. Mm-hmm. And what that means is if you find the right actors and make them feel comfortable in the role, you'll largely get a great performance. It's the same thing with employees at a company. If you find the right people and you get them comfortable with their role and to believe their crazy ideas have value. I'm sorry. You can believe they're crazy. If you can get people in a company together and make them believe that their crazy ideas aren't so crazy and have value, they'll do unbelievable things.
Absolutely. I think that there's also a bit of a process there in terms of, I need to know, for example, if I'm working in a company and I have 6 employees working for me, and so let's say I have to take one of my employees and find out what is their touch of the madness. So I think that part of a manager's job is to get to know that, get to that. And once you know that is, what that is, like do one-on-one meetings or regular meetings, whatever it is that it takes to get to that point, find that. And once you find that, basically the rest of the management is to tap into that and help them tap into that, because they don't know what it is often, right? So to get to their touch of the madness and that get to their creative spark, right? And then if that happens on organization wide, so if you have 6 managers working in your company, and 6 people have 6 managers have 6 people working, that's 36 people. If you can channel that creativity up through the organization, then you have something there that you can work with that can help you achieve things that you never thought possible before. And one of the things that, the Business Philosopher Within You podcast, a little bit of plug for the podcast itself. We come from this idea that we took out everything that makes us human about 200 years ago in the times of Industrial Revolution. right? We create this thing called the scientific management theories. And we basically didn't know what to do with all these human aspirations and human creativity and human genius and talent and all these things. And we try to structure it, right? Because we were fascinated with machines and we wanted to create our organizations like machines. So we created these management philosophies and management theories that basically takes out everything that makes us human. So, you've done some work with Star Trek. I think that you have data in Star Trek, right? In TNG, in the next generation. We want our people to be like data because it's all behaviors and intellect. There is no emotion. There is no aspirations. There is no goal. There is no madness. There is no creativity, right? Or of his own, nothing authentic about that person. And that's what we're trying to create. So the reason why I agree with your mission to bring fun is for that reason. That and there is direct implications of this to the organization. This is not something moral or ethical or anything like that. Businesses lose money because you're already paying for all this. That's the largest line item on our profit and loss statements. But when we don't tap into that creativity, Gallup has done studies that says that we only tap into about 33% of our people's creativity. The rest it goes unused. So we are not, as organizations, we're not utilizing this flow of creativity and genius and talent and aspirations and all this. We don't know how to challenge.
Listen, I agree. I mean, we have so many examples of that. We've promoted interns into executive roles in 6 months. We had an intern working for us a few years ago he was such a shy kid. He just sat where the production office is in the back, and for like 5 weeks we couldn't get him to say anything. We try this, we try that, and one day he said, "Well, I can kind of edit." Kid's a great editor.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, he was editing a feature film.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we promoted interns to associate producers, and that we still work with that editor. This is years ago. So you have to, as the manager, get rid of your preconceived notions. I mean, as much as, I'm a fan of great education, I'm fortunate enough to have one. I don't care. I don't care if someone went to every, Ivy League school in the world and then Oxford or never went to college. I only care about the results. And so if you see people, you have to prod them. That's what A Touch of the Madness does. I think the thing that draws people away from it, again, is this fear that somehow it's going to be incorrect or they're going to get criticized. I'm at the point in my career where if I tell someone an idea for a movie and they go, "Oh my God, that's great. That's fantastic. That sounds like a slam dunk," I get a little nervous. Yeah. But if they say, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Here you go again." I feel this kind of warm embrace of A Touch of the Madness. Yeah. Like a mist in the morning walk on the beach in the summer. And I go, "Okay, I'm on the right track and let's go do it." I don't mind if people call me crazy. So what? It's a compliment. But what if someone doesn't like your idea? What if someone hangs up? What if someone calls you crazy? So what? Right. We're somehow taught that that's not a good thing. I think it's a great thing. Yeah, so I think people just have to believe you can do it. And there's another old saying that people will do more to avoid what they fear than to seek what they desire. We have to make them feel that no. If you feel it, go for it. Take a shot. Try. Yeah. What the hell? Absolutely. The model who's on the cover of my Malibu Blonde book, which you can buy on Amazon or anywhere, this is her first big modeling job. And in shooting her for this, we got to know her. And she's very quiet when you meet her, but you can see something in her. And long story short, she's fantastic. And we're soon to announce that she's going to star in a movie. And she's never acted professionally before, but she's going to, and she's going to be a huge star because she has both the perseverance and the creativity. Now, we had to look at it and kind of prod her the first few times, but so what? That's the job of a producer or a CEO or any kind of manager. You have to find talent and try and encourage it.
Nurture it. Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
It's just that people don't think they can do it. They don't think they can call share. They don't think they can, give people version 2 of the song when they didn't change it from version 1. They don't think they can put snakes and wizards in their movie, but you can.
Yeah, sure. And I think what you were talking about a little bit is creating a culture where people are comfortable taking risks and doing things differently.
Yes, absolutely. You have to create that culture. And again, nothing great happens without taking a chance. You have to get people to believe that. We like it when people fight for what they want. We like it when people say, no, you're wrong. You have to watch this. You have to listen to this. You have to go to this movie. You have to see this performance. No, I think it's great.
And that's the culture you created, right? And that
we keep trying to create
and learn from.
Yeah. And look, I mean, a lot of people we find who we give what they want to. We give they come in, they say, I want to be a choreographer. I want to be an actress. And we say, okay. A lot of people run at that point. And it's sad, but my Buddhist friends say you can only plant the seeds. And if they're not ready, they're not ready, but you can still plant them. Maybe they'll come back 3 years later. Maybe they won't. That comes back to the perseverance thing.
Sure.
I mean, this, none of this is to imply that all you have to do is come up with a great idea tomorrow morning and everything.
Absolutely.
You've got to, it takes work. I mean, look at a professional boxer. If you're the best boxer on earth, who today is probably Floyd Mayweather, and you win every fight you've ever had, you still get hit 100 times in the fights. Absolutely. You win. The ones you win. Yeah. So you got to take that. Or in American baseball, if you hit 33%, which no one does, you're a superstar. That means you miss. You can strike out 2 out of every 3 times. Yeah. So you've got to get used to the knowledge that just because we say all this, it doesn't mean you don't then have to go put in the effort, because you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if I were to ask you which movie, and I think this is probably a difficult question for you to ask, because it's like asking a mom, who is your favorite baby, which movie that you created? It could be one of the 7 that I listed at the top, or it could be any other project or movie that you created. Which one is your favorite?
My next one. And I don't mean that as a funny joke. I have to think that way. Once I'm done with a movie, I'm proud of it. I like it, but I never go back and watch it. I mean, sometimes I'm speaking and they show a little of it or something. Yeah. But and it's not because I don't like it anymore. It's because I can't influence it anymore. Once a movie, a song, a book, a photography is out in the world, it's really not yours anymore. It's up to everyone else to interpret. I can tell you all day long. I can Monday morning quarterback, as they say, any movie. I should have done this. It doesn't matter. It's there. But I have to think all the time, okay, what's next? What can I do now? And I'm always, because that excitement, that touch of the madness, that zeal helps the movie get made. Yeah. So I don't sit around and think, oh, gee, X movie, boy, that was great. Yeah. I mean, occasionally for a minute, someone is kind enough to say something like you. So I think about it for a second. No. I think of my next one. I'm always thinking of my next one.
Right. What I love about talking to you is the fact that I ask a question and I don't get the answer that I thought I was going to get. So when you said, I thought you were going to pick, Terminator 2 or something like that. And you said my next one. That was awesome. That's a perfect answer.
To get a movie made, it's like launching a rocket. You have to believe, remember, you're getting like $100 million on one roll of the dice. Yeah. Friday night at 8:00. So you've got to, I would never try and sell anything as a producer I would not buy as a studio head. Yeah. So I have to be so excited about it. Yeah. And I only do projects I'm that excited about. And I don't care if it takes me, some going really quick, some take 10 years. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, in business world, they talk about this a little bit, that, business building or, being entrepreneur, being business builder, owner, president, CEO, leader, it looks glamorous from the outside looking in, which I think applies even to you more. I mean, here's a guy who is making all these movies, hanging out with these big stars and directors and all this, all these iconic titles that, he's got on his walls. But, life is not always moonlight and roses, right? Has there ever been a time in your life which was, you can, in the hindsight, call it dark night of the soul, that, can you tell us a little bit about that? Something like that. Something happened that you thought, I can't recover from this. It could be professional, personal, some disaster-like situation.
No, I've had certainly my share of ups and downs, and that's the game, and I didn't think I couldn't recover. But yeah, sometimes it's really hard. I mean, we tend to come on shows like this and make it seem like you jump from one hit to another hit to another, but that's not how it goes. There are lots of other movies in the middle that didn't work or come and go, or didn't make it, or got stalled, but again, I have to practice what I preach. So that perseverance has to be part of what I do too. And that you just have to realize that that's the game, and you have to, maybe have a bad day or 2 or 3 or 4, and then you dust yourself up and you got to go take another swing again. My great martial arts sensei who taught everyone, including me, how to fight for Mortal Kombat, said the mark of a champion is not how you punch, but how you take a punch. Uh-huh. And there's tons of things like that. It's not all, when you say, oh, you glamorous life living with movie stars, there's wonderful moments, but we were the studio heads on the studio that did Platoon. The actual producer was this great guy named Arnold Copelson, tough as nails guy. Yeah. And, the movie was shot for a very low budget in the Philippines. And he was telling me this story about how he had to get a lunch and get it into the Philippines so it wouldn't melt and the crew could have a good lunch and it wouldn't be soggy, it wouldn't be covered in bugs. And he said, glamorous life of a movie producer, huh? I'm sitting at 100-degree weather trying to figure out how to get cold sandwiches into the Philippines. So you have to do whatever it is you have to do. And yeah, it's not all glamorous. But I was scouting not too long ago for a movie we're going to do in Petra in Jordan, which is gorgeous place. And we're climbing up this mountain, which has got 1,000 stairs. It was 90-something degrees, covered in bugs, hot as can be. Yeah. And I thought, this is great. I mean, to me, that's heaven. I love that. I like that more than being at the Met Gala. And so but if you think glamorous life of a movie producer, we didn't take the Sikorsky helicopter up and then, where someone was there with a hotel. Not at all. Yeah. You got to get in there and do this stuff. And some days it's better than others. Yeah. My other thing, I know I talk about trainers a lot, but remember I live in the Mortal Kombat world. I said to one of my trainers, how come some days I come to the gym and I feel great? And the next day I do the same thing and I don't feel so good. Right. And he got mad at me and he said, you don't ask that question. You don't ask that question. Champions don't ask that question. The important thing is you show up, good or bad, and you do it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And I love that coming from someone who is actually creating things, because the creativity is not just, not to belabor the point, but creativity is not just ideas, but the execution is also.
Yeah, I always have a moment on a movie where I realize I created this sitting on my couch 2 years ago, and here it is. And I have these kind of touchstone scenes in my mind, and if I get them, I know that we got it. And the other thing that happens to me too, and I would suggest this is a good way of knowing if you're on the right creative track. When we create a script, I have a wonderful co-writer named Sean Derrick, and we write scripts together. And the characters in my movies, it's like they become friends of mine. I'll refer to them the way I'd refer to a friend. Oh, my brother did this, and Lucian Fabulous is a character, did that. And I think of them, and I like them, and I like talking about them, and I could tell you about them all day long. And that's how I know I'm on the right track.
Absolutely. Something else, in my case, I look for when the moment is right. And I meditate too. When I'm in the present moment and everything is, I'm having a conversation, I get goosebumps.
Oh, that's great.
And that tells me that we're we're doing the right thing at the right time, and I should be doing this in this moment.
That's very lucky. That's a great sign you have. That's great.
And that's we are always in the right place. And when you can go deep into this understanding of meditation, meditative arts and things like that, you realize that you're always in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Oh, even when you're being bitten by mosquitoes and it's 100 degrees
I loved it.
Temperature,
I
right?
agree.
Agree. And I so love the fact that you actually thrive on that. And
I love it.
You're in that place. So if I want to take one more shot at this and see what I can get from you. Who is the most interesting person you worked with?
Who's the most interesting person I've worked with?
We won't tell anyone that you don't pick.
Yeah, see, that's a hard question about it. Let's think the most interesting person I've worked with. I'll sort of answer it. So my book, The Touch of the Madness, which just uses stories like the ones I've told to explain A Touch of the Madness. It's dedicated, the dedication says to all the great scoundrels. And if you don't know the word scoundrels, if you're listening, it's kind of an old, like a 1940s term for kind of lovable thief or a lovable criminal. Like a scoundrel is a guy who comes to town, takes you out, you have an amazing time of your life, and Monday morning you realize he was using your credit card. But you still had a great time.
Yeah.
So the scoundrels of the movie business, especially when I started, were these guys who you just couldn't pin down. In one sense, they were a little iffy, but boy, would they do anything to get a movie made. And boy, were they creative. And boy, were they perseverant. And boy, were they larger than life personalities. Yeah. So in general, although I've been blessed, I have a great partner, Jimmy Einer. I have great people I work with, like Sean and Michael. And I've worked with some wonderful people from, meeting guys like Thich Nhat Hanh to great directors. But the people who kind of fascinate me the most, but as I look back, are the great scoundrels.
And the great scoundrels.
Because you don't really have any anymore. Now everyone's a corporate vice president.
Absolutely.
So it's just a different world. So when I was young and I got to meet a lot of these guys, and they were hysterical. And they were so, I don't care what we're doing, we're getting this movie made. And so it's to me, it's the great scoundrels.
Yeah. And on that note, what is the thing if I can complain a little bit to you? Your movies are great. I love them. And yet we have this trend a little bit. and I'm not going to mention names, but it seems like the movie business probably sometimes has lost its touch of the madness, in the sense that it's getting a little bit die-cast, you know.
Oh no, that's why I wrote the book. It's completely losing its sense of it, and that's because of a sort of we had a kind of a perfect storm. We had a pandemics, then followed by writer and actor strikes. So that's almost 5 years we couldn't really work.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, we had a huge political correct movement, and it made everyone scared to death to take a chance. That's why I wrote the book, for my own compadres too, to say we got to take some chances. I literally, my last call, we have this great financing partner we're working with, great guy, been around forever.
Yeah.
And but financiers always say, okay, who's the cast? What's the budget? And I said, at a point, you got to love the project, the way I told you the Platoon story.
Yeah.
But you're right, and the audience is getting onto it. In the 1950s in America, it was very conservative time,
right?
And movies were like this. You couldn't take chances, you couldn't do anything. And what happened is, by the early 60s, the movie business was starting to fail. And everyone was going out of business. And that's what did it. Then this was the studio said, we got to do something. We're going to be gone.
Yeah.
And that led way to a creative freedom that in the mid 60s, all the way up to the 80s, that came movies like, The Godfather and Bonnie and Clyde and Midnight Cowboy. And I think that's what's going to happen now, because what everyone is realizing what you said. What most people do is they turn on streaming, which is a great service, and they click around and they watch Seinfeld reruns.
Right.
I mean, that's what no. We have to have a touch of the madness. I tell you, that's why I wrote the book. That's why I did my other book, Bring Back Fun, and say, just go for it. If you're a little offended, don't watch it. It's fine.
Yeah. I think your book is timely. I think.
Thanks. I hope so.
Yeah. And we need it. We definitely need it in the movie industry, but also outside the movie industry, in business world. And I think everybody should read it. I have bought it. I have not read it. So, but I will read
well, if you do, let me know what you think.
I will. And And on that note, just a little bit more. I think that there's. Well, let me just ask a question. Is it going to really take a major failure on the part of the movie industry to really create something? Like, for example, Marvel, right? They've been creating these, the whole universe. My girls love it. I have my grown daughters, and they love them. But I think even they're starting to get a little tired of them, because it's they're just milking the cow, and but Disney stock is starting to suffer a little bit. They've done all the right moves in the corporate world, but they're not, So maybe that's what it takes. I don't know.
Well, that's been happening, and that is what it takes.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that will speak. And when just like in the early 60s, when companies start to fail and people stop going and something's wrong and the movies aren't good anymore, people now have a lot of alternatives. They didn't have that many alternatives in 1962.
Yeah.
You can just watch TikTok all night, which a lot of kids especially do.
Yeah.
And so you have to be better than ever. You have to be on your game. I'm a huge believer in the long-term success in the movie business for the following reason. There's something that people just start to talk about, but they don't really understand. We say Hollywood movies are worldwide, but they're not really, because most of money in Hollywood in the last 120 years comes from Western Europe, North America, Japan, and Korea. That's only 20% of the world by population. That means over 5 billion people aren't watching our movies.
Yeah.
But because we couldn't really distribute efficiently to those places, but between digital distribution and other things, we can now. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is make movies that work for the entire world. Right. And say, wait a minute, here's where the growth is. The growth is there's never been an Indian movie that's a hit in America. There's only been a couple of Chinese movies that are hits in America. Right. There've only been a few American movies that are hits in India. I'm just using those as an example.
Sure.
Africa, demographically, has the 5 of the 10 top economies in the world in the next 10, 20 years are predicted to be in Africa. We had a business in Africa a few years ago. Great market. Yeah. Tons of young people. That's the opportunity. We have to grow worldwide.
Absolutely.
And make movies that work. So I don't want people to say anymore, it's a Hollywood movie, it's a Bollywood movie, it's a Shanghai movie. I want them to say it's a movie. And so we're betting a lot on that. And that's what I think will grow us out of it.
If someone wants to get hold of you, and have a conversation with you, what is one topic that you want to talk to them about? I'm assuming, I think I have a guess, but you always surprise me, so it might be something else. What is one thing that you want to talk to them about, and how do they get hold of you?
Well, I try to be helpful if I can, and what I look for is a touch of the madness.
Yeah.
I mean, I look for. I mean, I'm not just saying this stuff. This is how I live.
Yeah.
It was very easy to write this book because it's just what I do. So I look and I think, huh.
Yeah.
And, because I encourage people in my book to ask, a lot of people call me now and say, hey, you said to call and ask. So we do. And so you can get a hold of me on Instagram, which is Larry Kasanoff, and on LinkedIn, which is Larry Kasanoff. And so those are probably the two best ways. Or our info at thresholdentertainment.com. That's my company, Threshold. So info at thresholdentertainment.com. You can also get a hold.
All right. We'll put all the information in our show notes. And I thank you for being on the show.
I really enjoyed it.
An unbelievable conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and maybe we'll have you again.
Sure. Anytime.